Good morning, everyone. Teresa, I'll be guided by you when to officially open the webinar.
Tansile. Hi, everyone. Tansile, you can please proceed with introducing our wonderful presenters, and then we can take it from there.
Hey, I'm just sorting my sitting space. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is okay and we all having a beautiful day from whichever space we are in. And I want to switch on my camera just so that people can see who is me here. Yes, I'm Tansile Cindi, and I work for the South African National Biodiversity Institute, which is also an entity of the Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and the Environment. I'll just like to request that colleagues put their names and organizations in the chat as a way of gathering who's here with us today. So I just want to share a timeline of where we come from with this work in strategic water source areas before I introduce our speaker today, if that's okay with everyone. Can everyone see my presentation, Teresa?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So this work has quite a number of initiatives that were implemented since 2004 in the recognition of the importance of strategic water source areas and the need to ensure that they are protected and managed in an effective way. And at the time in 2004, I think we were still calling them high water yield catchments instead of the term that we are using now, strategic water source areas. And I'm just showing this slide to show where we started with this work and also to just make aware that with all the initiatives that happened, there has been a lot of work that has come forward and also why the strategic water source areas were then included in medium-term strategic framework, the MTSF in 2019, which just shown that it partners, the government, everyone that is working in the space, the communities, academia, NGOs started working together in different initiatives to make sure that this work gets recognized, this work gets done. And we had an opportunity as SANBI because we work through and we work with a lot of learning platforms, LaRSSA being one of the learning platforms that SANBI is a member of. And I happen to have an opportunity to serve in the council of LaRSSA. And in 2022, we were kindly allowed by the LaRSSA to showcase and give information about the work that the department was doing in terms of strategic water source areas. So today, we are also appreciating the fact that LaRSSA has given us again the space to just give feedback as the department on where we are with the work. What does it look like? What does it mean to be doing this work? And who needs to get involved? And how we can all get involved in making sure that our strategic water source areas protected, are managed in a sustainable manner. So I'm going to stop sharing, colleagues. And I then want to take this opportunity to say thank you to the department to also being part here. And we also in LaRSSA, we also have the department support, and we appreciate that support. Before I introduce Mr. Stanley is going to kill me because I'm going to be I'm going to try, Stanley, not to slice your surname up. Mr. Chitwa Mulomoni, Stanley from the DFFE. I want to introduce you, but before I introduce Stanley, I want to just also remind everyone that is here today that in a month's time, a couple of weeks' time, actually, we will be hosting the 11th LaRSSA conference in Sun City from the 17th to the 20th of September under the theme Success by Design. It's a very exciting theme. For me, I believe it's a very exciting theme because it can be interpreted in so many ways, especially in the land rehabilitation space in the country. So I will share the link to register for everyone. Please join us, join this community of practice, and let's have those conversations for conservation. Without wasting any more time, I will introduce Stanley. He is a director that is responsible for strategic water source areas, wetlands conservation in the department. He has a lot of experience in wetlands and water-related ecosystem, and he also manages and coordinates the development and implementation of policies, plans, and programs that are related to strategic water source areas and wetlands of international importance. He also provides strategic advice for securing strategic water source areas for people, for environment, and the economy. And his interest really lies in enabling and facilitating collaborations towards conservation and securing the country's most important assets, strategic water source areas and wetlands. Stanley, I'm going to hand over to you now to come in and give us your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dansile. Am I audible on the other side?
Yes, you are.
Is my presentation also visible?
Yes, yes, and it's on presentation mode. Thank you. Over to you.
Let me first put my face on the name so that people can associate the face with the name. Thank you so much. I will mute my camera. Thank you so much, Dansile, for that introduction. The only time when introduction did not line up with reality was one time wherein we were attending the session like this, and the person who was introduced as professor in linguistics, and his first paragraph of his speech was found to be grammatically incorrect. So that's the danger of painting people before they come. That was just an introduction. I'm going to give you an overview of the strategic water source areas and their importance as key natural assets. And thanks to LaRSSA for giving us this opportunity. As you are aware, we are facing a trajectory that makes us worried now, where it is projected that by 2040, there are areas that will be falling under extremely high demand or water stress. And we are classified, as you can see from the colors, we are classified under those areas that by 2040, we will be having a problem in as far as water is concerned. And then we are now aware of the importance of conserving these crucial habitats, which are strategic water source areas. As you are aware, colleagues, South Africa is a water scarce country with around half of the global annual rainfall, where the rainfall is found to be unevenly distributed throughout the country. across seasons and the years. However, numerous studies have predicted that this water scarcity will increase over time, and this will be due to escalating demand for economic, population growth, urbanization, and rising standards of living. And also the unsustainable use and high level of wastage and loss and increasing pollution renders the available water not fit for use. Here is the overview of the strategic water source areas. As you are aware, these are areas that are considered as water towers. They provide 50% of our water and constitute 10% of the land area of South Africa and our neighboring countries, which are Eswatini and Lesotho. They support 50% of our population and 64% of our economy. When it comes to agriculture, 70% of our agriculture depend on these areas. Here is the map which shows you the 22 strategic water source areas which are of surface in nature. And the numbers are showing you to denote where the strategic water source areas is. In terms of the extent, they cover an area of 12.4 million hectares. And for those who did mathematics, they can conclude that this area is equivalent to 6 Kruger National Parks. In terms of extent, they cover 6 provinces: Western Cape, Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and Free State. In terms of districts coverage, they cover 34 districts, and they are found within 6 water management areas. Some of these cut across water management areas and catchments. And in terms of sharing them with our neighboring countries, there are 7 transboundary ones. But most significantly is Mbabane Hills shared with Eswatini, and Maluti Drakensberg, which is shared with Eswatini. It should be noted that strategic water source areas for groundwater have also been identified, but they haven't yet been delineated or mapped at a finer scale, the same way as the surface water strategic water source areas are. This is the map that shows where the groundwater strategic water source areas are in terms of coverage. They cover around 9% of the land surface of South Africa. Majority of them, they overlap with surface water strategic water source areas. They account for up to 42% of the river base flow, and they have a key role in sustaining surface water flows during dry seasons. So in terms of water banking, the groundwater banks water for us for use in time of need. Such strategic water source areas, unfortunately, they face multiple pressures and they are in need of securing. If you can check on the pictures that are before you, you will realize that although strategic water source areas are vitally important, they are living landscapes and face multiple pressures, including pressures from mining, urban sprawl, agricultural activities, and as such, numerous national strategies in South Africa have identified the need to secure this. And when it comes to securing, a definition has been coined to refer to the progressive, collaborative, and adaptive implementation of a range of mechanisms that aim to enhance the ability of a strategic water source area to deliver the maximum quantity of good quality fresh water for people, economic activity, and ecosystem, both within and downstream, in a way that helps assure efficient, equitable, and sustainable water supply and access to water for all. And in terms of, remember when we report back to you in the previous engagement, we indicated that we were busy coming up with mechanisms that are needed to ensure the securing of strategic water source area. And we ended up developing something called the mechanism framework, which is structured into three categories: reflective mechanisms, which are now going to be known as adaptive implementation mechanism, and enabling mechanisms. And to help us unpack the range of the mechanisms that could be applied, a mechanism framework has been developed, and we are busy trying to reconfigure it so that it can reflect what is in the ground. At this stage, the framework is divided into implementation, enabling, and reflexive, as I indicated. And this will ensure that whatever we do on the ground should respond to us securing strategic water source areas. And if you can check on the implementation mechanism, we are looking at protection, restoration, avoiding loss and degradation, improve land and water management. Those are the things that if we can do on the ground, then we will be able to secure our strategic water source areas. However, if we do so forgetting that we are in a land where there are policies and legislations, where there are partners, where research is needed, and finance sometimes in time where we need to implement some other projects. So all these mechanisms put together are geared towards the securing of strategic water source areas. Strategic water source areas, as much as they are good for water and biodiversity, you can take a moment here and look at the land uses that are found in the strategic water source areas. And when you look at them, you will therefore think of which of the two will best suit the securing of that strategic water source area. Because when you look at from your right-hand side, you will realize that we have got winelands. We also have urban areas. We also have areas where there are mining areas, where they are rural in nature. So strategic water source areas have a range of different land uses in them. And therefore, some of them have vast lands that are still pristine, in pristine condition, while others are highly modified. And because of that, the application of a mechanism to secure a particular strategic water source area will be dependent on what is the resource base or what is the situation in that particular strategic water source area at a given time. In terms of the enabling mechanism, you will realize that strategic water source areas have been incorporated in a range of legislation and high-level government strategies, including regulations for the use of water for exploration and production of onshore naturally occurring hydrocarbons. The DFFE also have the environmental impact assessment screening tool. This enables the developers through the environmental impact practitioners to identify the areas that have got strategic water source areas before they even embark on the project. We have now the draft National Water Amendment Bill, and this provides for a section that will protect the strategic water source area, and it will look also on the prohibitions and restrictions associated with it. As we are aware, we have got the National Biodiversity Framework. We also have the National Spatial Development Framework, the Climate Change Vulnerability Assessment and Adaptation Strategy, and the National Water Resource Strategy. All of these have got elements of strategic water source areas that are aimed at either securing them, conserving them, or protecting them. In terms of governance, there are a number of national government structures that are established to enable cooperative governance around these strategic water source areas. The main ones are the Government Authority Committee. This aims to coordinate and supervise the securing of strategic water source areas by gathering all relevant national government departments and agencies related to the governance of strategic water source areas. In as far as delineation is concerned, we have got the spatial task team that was core in the delineation of the surface water strategic water source areas, and we are still looking ahead to see their participation in the delineation of the groundwater strategic water source areas. As you are aware, the Convention on Biological Diversity, which we are party to, has adopted the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which contained amongst its targets the 30 by 30 target that we should achieve by the year 2030. And we have the strategic water source areas 30 by 30 subgroup that looks at to what extent can strategic water source areas be used to achieve this particular target. In terms of progress towards securing the strategic water source area, you will realize that the establishment of the strategic water source area partnership platforms has achieved to share knowledge between the stakeholders in this landscape and prioritize or align actions. As you can see, we have got partnerships that are evenly distributed across the strategic water source areas, from the north going down the east, then south, and the western part of the country. And because of this, you will realize that there are some of the strategic water source areas that benefit from more than one partnership, whilst others have got more than one partnership. These partnerships are aimed to facilitate activities that are happening in a particular strategic water source areas. In terms of these partnerships, at a national, we have got government departments, which are DFFE, DWS, DALRAT, and in terms of government entities, we have got Water Research Commission, CSIR, SANBI, and NGOs includes, but not limited to, WWF South Africa, TNC, EWT, and Wildlife Trust. In terms of the research that have been conducted in strategic water source areas and funded by a wide range of partners, you will realize that most of the work has been done in strategic water source areas, and some of the work have been built upon the previous work just for refinement. And we have got these publications that are already out there. Some of them, they are from NGOs, some of them, they are from government entities, some of them, they are from government itself. In terms of the key studies undertaken in strategic water source areas, as I said, recently we have a study that was undertaken in strategic water source area that shed light of the history of the strategic water source areas from 1990 to 2020, which is entitled National Capital Accounts for Strategic Water Source Areas. This report will give you the extent of a strategic water source area, the resource use of that particular strategic water source area, the population density, and things like that. Some of the other outcomes are as follows. Most of the strategic water source areas, 60% of the total area of strategic water source areas are grasslands, biome 20% in fynbos and 13% in savanna. These are the accounts that we are, or the outcomes that we are finding from the accounts themselves. The province where strategic water source area make up the greatest extent is KwaZulu-Natal, with over 3 million hectares of strategic water source areas, and this makes 34% of the province. Strategic water source area vary greatly in size, with the southern Drakensberg having the largest extent of 2 million hectares, which might be the size of Kruger National Park. And in terms of the net decrease, there was a net decrease of 181,141 hectares in natural or semi-natural land cover in strategic water source areas for over a period of 30 years, from 1990 to 2020. And 29% of the land cover of the strategic water source area have been transformed, with timber plantation making the greatest extent of the strategic water source areas. Studies also that were conducted to assess the opportunity for protected areas expansion and ecosystem restoration in South Africa in strategic water source areas was done by the EWT, and we thank EWT for that. It was aimed at recognizing regions suitable for conservation and restoration, and also to boost awareness regarding the role of biodiversity conservation and habitat restoration, and also to inform protected areas expansion in line with the 30 by 30 target that I have indicated. And some of the key findings were that conservation and restoration in strategic water source areas will improve the water security in the country, and that currently around only 9.28% of South Africa's land surface is formally protected, meaning that we effectively need to have more than triple the size of what we have in order to reach the ambition that we agreed to at global level. And this is a considerable amount of recoverable land within this potential protected landscape, which amounts to 41,245 hectares. And in terms of some of the current studies that are underway, you will realize that invasive alien species are problematic in areas that have got water, and there are studies that are underway, like, for example, mapping woody invasive alien plant species project, and also the one on refinement of groundwater strategic water source areas, with the case study by DWS, and also the SANBI draft framework guide for local municipalities. This is aimed to empower municipalities as to how should they plan their activities that are related to IDPs, considering the strategic water source areas in their jurisdiction. And in terms of data collection, data has been collected from all kind of sources. We have got the National Monitoring Program by the DWS and the River Ecostatus Monitoring Program, or REM. We've got the National Chemical Monitoring Program and the National Estuarine Monitoring Program. All these are aimed to monitor what is happening in the strategic water source areas. Then we have got citizen science, where everyone now is involved. And this slide highlights the power of citizen science tool to monitor data across the strategic water source area. Citizen science projects for water quality monitoring provides data about bigger ecosystems, watersheds, in addition to local water sources. Such information, colleagues, can be particularly useful in the determination of the water quality trends over time and highlighting areas necessary for more research. In terms of financing through biodiversity economy, they have been realized that there is a relationship between the strategic water source areas and the biodiversity economy nodes that we have in the country. So important to note is that the DFFE has got the biodiversity economy strategy that have been refined recently, just to include other elements that were not included previously. And it was found that this has got a potential to contribute towards the financial needs for sustainable land and water management within the strategic water source areas. In terms of other sources of funding, there is a collaborative effort amongst DWS, DFFE, and SANBI to source funds through the Global Green Climate Fund. And the project is entitled Ecosystem-Based Adaptation for Water Security in South Africa. So you can see that the aim is to conserve resource base and boosting water security through securing of strategic water source area. And this funding is in line with the objectives of securing strategic water source areas. And in terms of implementation mechanism, if we look at protection, you remember I referred you to the 30 by 30 task team that is responsible for looking at opportunities for strategic water source areas for us to reach the 30 by 30. You will realize that the Grassland National Park, which is a high altitude national park in the mountains of the Eastern Cape near the Lesotho border, this will be one of the parks that will be declared within the strategic water source areas, and it will then add more hectareage to the conservation estate that we have in the country. In terms of protection further, you will realize that the DWS, they are custodians of determining the resource directive measures and resource quality objectives. And this map, it shows where the RQOs has been determined in the and the reserves has been determined in the 22 strategic water source areas, or in simple terms, it represents the current status of the reserve studies that were done across the strategic water source areas, all of them, not just some. Then in terms of still under protection, the 30 by 30 subgroup has been tasked to look at the opportunity of strategic water source areas to contribute into this. and they are mainly looking at 5 pillars, which are inclusive, transformed society, unlocking fiscal resources, unlocking internal barriers and enhancing alignment, enhancing evidence for decision making, and partnership strengthening and alignment, and of which partnership strengthening is one of the mechanisms that can help us to achieve more on the ground, and that will be realized through some key interventions that includes, amongst others, a development of understanding of specific traditional leadership structures for engagement, amongst others. Still, in terms of protection, you will realize that there are several springs that are associated with strategic water source areas. And there is a need for these strategic water source areas that have got those critical springs for the springs to be protected. And within the Eastern Cape strategic water source area, the upper Umzimvubu catchment is a major catchment for that. And 13 of the 94 springs that were found in this region are protected. And therefore, in order for us to continue having the water supply from the strategic water source areas, springs that are associated with these strategic water source areas should be protected for the future use and current use by the communities that are associated with them. In terms of capacity building, as you are aware, SANBI has integrated the mainstreaming of strategic water source areas into the municipal planning and decision-making activities, and that was reflected in the 2023-24 annual performance plan. And the target for that particular financial year was 13 capacity building work session held with district municipalities. In other words, SANBI undertook the capacity building sessions in 2013, in 2023 in 13 district municipalities. You can see the impact, how much is it, because district municipalities have got local municipalities, and when that information is now translated to the local municipalities, it is a high coverage in terms of awareness. In terms of transboundary strategic water source areas, remember we said we have got 7 of them that are transboundary, and 4 are shared with Lesotho, and 3 are shared with Eswatini. And this calls for transboundary engagement, which we are lucky as the country that we have got transfrontier conservation areas arrangements that we have. One of them is Maloti Drakensberg, a transfrontier conservation area that covers the Maloti Drakensberg strategic water source area. We have got also Oranje Sengu River Basin Agreement, and we also have other agreements that are not at that higher level, but are aimed at working towards securing and protecting these strategic water source areas. In terms of rehabilitation, as you are aware, you will realize that the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, through the EP branch or environmental program, we have the working on programs that includes the one on water, fire, we also have high altitude teams. We also have working for ecosystems, wetlands, and value-added industries. all of which are aimed at rehabilitation of these crucial habitats and provide jobs and contribute to the green economy, as the stats are reflected there. In terms of the adaptive mechanism, we are looking at the use of communication or engagements. We have got SANBI, Strategic Water Source Areas fact sheets, that when you read them, you won't regret, because you will know what is a strategic water source area, what do they provide, how can you interact with them, and what are the do's and the don'ts when you are in a strategic water source area. We also have, as I indicated, the accounts for strategic water source area, which I think this is a blueprint for management of strategic water source areas. There are also websites and story maps for bioscape projects, and we also have the National Strategic Water Source Forum engagement. Those are the platforms that if you find yourself in, you will be able to know your water resources and what interventions are needed in order to secure them. And in terms of monitoring and evaluation, the DFFE, in collaboration with SANBI, developed the reports on measures to secure strategic water source areas. And in the period of 2022-2023, we were focusing on, in 2022, we focused on, I think it was 6, and then 2023, it was 5. In total, it was 11. And some of the recommended future measures to secure strategic water source areas includes to enable the identification of gaps in the knowledge of the strategic water source areas themselves, improved fine-scale map, undertake activities to ensure protected areas within them, opportunities for water stewardship initiatives to be implemented, detailed stakeholder inventories to be conducted, and data on initiatives in the strategic water source areas was found that is not easily accessible, and it needs to be well coordinated. Let me take this opportunity to say thank you for listening.
Thank you, Stanley. Colleagues, I see the chat is very busy. And I'm just not sure how to allow for meaningful engagement and talking into what we are hearing coming from the department. I'm going to maybe give an opportunity to 5 colleagues that wants to have an engagement and listen and share what they are hearing and what does it mean. And also I'll ask that other colleagues that we might not be able to get to, please put your questions in the Q&A, and then we'll give Stanley an opportunity to also look into those. Can I also check with the team from DFFE and SANBI, is there anything that you want to add before I open for questions? Hello, can you hear me?
I don't
You
think
are
there's
very
no
audible.
further inputs from our side, from the DFFE team. I think Stanley covered everything quite well, but I see there's quite an eagerness to jump straight into the questions. Thanks.
Okay, all right. There's also an Nivasha. Kindly let Gary have a say. Interested to hear Gary's input. May I ask the LaRSSA team to unmute Gary and give him the platform to give his input. As I see there was a lot of Gary chat in the chat.
Dansile, everyone has been unmuted. They can just unmute on their side.
Okay, and then after Gary, we'll give Tomani a say. I see you, Tomani. Thank you. Come in, Gary.
Hi, Dansile. I've given all my comments in the chat, so I guess you guys can read it there. Yeah, no, I just worry that if one looks through the scientific papers, really just looking at the resource side and not considering what you do with the water downstream, it's really quite short-sighted. I mean, you're going to run out of the last dam that's been connected in Lesotho. You're going to need another one already. That's how ridiculous the approach is. So that's my short and sweet response. Thanks.
Thanks, Gary. It would have been also nice to just add an alternative of the ridiculousness that you are referring to, because it's easier to point fingers, but when you're not coming with solutions, it makes it a very fruitless exercise. But anyway, that's a story for a different
exactly
day.
what the approach should be in my comments. I mean, it's like running your car's radiator by topping it up continuously, or running a stream over your engine to keep it cool. You need to use that, recirculate the water as in a radiator and just top up as necessary. So it means effectively using your resources downstream. I mean, leave the mountain catchments alone. Well, you take the water out there, use it effectively. What we're doing at the moment, I mean, I don't need to tell you. You just do a search on sustainable and resilient water resource use, on the internet. You find plenty of information going back 10, 20 years already. And we're still stuck in this resource extraction mode. It's totally ridiculous. I mean, there's plenty to be read in the literature on this.
Thanks, Gary, for your input. Okay. Tomani, do you want to come in? Then followed by Pete, and then Kieran, and then I'll give Stanley and my colleagues the opportunity to reflect back. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to engage with you. And firstly, I would like to thank Stanley for wonderful presentation. It was very informative for someone like myself who's not into the space. I consider myself more a spectator than the player. Be that being the case, if I heard you correctly, you said that the 50% of our water comes from the water sources coming from the Eswatini and Lesotho. If that is correct, then it means that there is a need for a concerted effort on transboundary cooperation so as to foster securing these water resources. And I see on the mechanisms that you have highlighted, there is perhaps a lack or inadequacy in terms of using transboundary cooperation as a strategy to secure water resources. So it's something that I think as a department going forward, it's something that perhaps I think it's a low-hanging fruit that you can take advantage of and try to explore perhaps using the regional cooperation institutions like SADC. And SADC, I think it has got an established SADC protocol on shared water resources, which is something that I think the Department of Water and Sanitation, as well as other entities, are participating in that. So I think it's something that we need, or maybe you as the custodians of strategic water source areas, to try and bring this to the fore, so that then there is this attention to these resources from transboundary, from neighboring countries. Then the other issues around the district development model, which I believe, in light of the political dynamics that have happened following the elections and so on, you may find that this model, in some setups, it may not be effective because of political contradictions. When it comes to issues of coalitions and so on. And I'm saying this based on experience, because I've seen in some of the cases in the OR Tambo, in eThekwini, where you find that the municipalities are governed by different parties. And when it comes to, say, one budget, one plan, it does not work. So I have seen that perhaps it's worth rethinking the issue of around district development model. And the other question that I would like to ask is around the TFCAs, Transfrontier Conservation Areas. I'm not very much familiar with this, but I would like to know how effective are these as mechanisms for conservation of strategic water source areas. I just read about them, but I don't see in practice how do they work and all of that, and how effective they are in terms of conserving water resource areas. And lastly, but not least, in line with the first speaker, I think he's got a point that perhaps instead of relying too much on the waters that comes from the mountains of Eswatini as well as Lesotho, perhaps we need also, as part of managing or trying to secure what strategic water source areas, is to encourage perhaps wastewater reuse and some other water conservation and demand management strategies here downstream, in fact. So that is the point, perhaps, I think, that I gather from his comments and so on. And I think that is another point that perhaps brings the issue of climate change. If you look at the forecast, it shows that insofar as Lesotho is concerned, it's going to be much more drier going forward. So perhaps that strategic water source area is not that secure. After all, we may have all these other legislative and other practical activities that we are trying to do to protect, but there is an issue of climate change, which is a silent one, that perhaps we need to look at that in line with the issues that we have just mentioned around water reuse and so on. But that is being the case. I thank you very much for the informative presentation, and I believe that I've made a little contribution with these comments. As you can see, there are questions as well as some of things that you can take forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tomani, for that. Stanley, I want to give you the opportunity, just looking at the 5 minutes left in our meeting. Can I ask that, Stanley, you reflect back to Tomani's inputs and questions and comments? And I would like to ask Pete maybe to put his question in the chat, and then we'll try to deal with it in case we don't get to the time. Thank you. Come in, Stanley.
Thank you so much. I think we should not also omit Gary.
Yes, please respond.
Gary has a point of saying the sustainability of the resource is in the use. And he says, as much as we have got water supply that is coming from these strategic water source areas, we should also start looking at effectively using the resources that we have downstream. I think that call from you, Gary, is the call of sustainability, which needs to be also filtered in the reticulation system and the allocation of water resources. Tomani touched a lot of things. He said, because we are sharing these strategic water source areas with Lesotho and Eswatini, we need to look at issue of collaboration and foster the use of transboundary collaborations, which he mentioned, even one of them, which is the use of transfrontier conservation areas. And he asked, how does it work? I will elaborate on that one. On the issue of other transboundary collaborations that relates to water, it will be only those that are found in the jurisdiction where the strategic water source areas are. And thanks for your advice on the district development model. Remember, we just follow the model because we are not working closer with it. But when there are dynamics that need to be looked at, I think you will become the appropriate resource when SANBI wants to rethink the approach. Let me respond to how effective the TFCA is working. They have got structures within them that guides the operation. One of them is a joint management board that sits and reflects on what is happening in those areas that are affected. And thanks once again for giving us the insight on anticipating the next bounce of the ball in as far as climate change is concerned, because the world and the climate is changing, and we need to start rethinking going forward. Otherwise, we might be caught off guard. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. Pete, do you want to quickly come in? We've got 2 minutes left. If you can just use the 1 minute or less, and then I'll give to Dr. Gola also an opportunity to say something. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danzile. Yeah, just quickly, a few things. You're focusing quite heavily on biodiversity in your protection measures. I think it would be more important to strike a balance and not be lopsided towards biodiversity as such, but to look at a full balanced approach for each catchment, and look at other economic activities that's already there. Forestry was mentioned. Very brief touch was made on mining. Agriculture, a lot of these high-yielding areas obviously have high rainfall, so it could be very high-yielding crop areas. I think a more balanced approach should be looked at to see how you can improve catchment yield, not only through protecting biodiversity or declaring protected areas that could exclude other development. I think that's the one thing, and that it relates back to what Gary has said about the cyclical way that we can manage water, and to see how we can improve in our reuse. One of the comments I also wanted to make was on the funding side. Again, the funding looks at protection measures and trying to protect biodiversity and create funding through, I think, tourism or something like that. I think the funding should come from water pricing. The people that use it should also be paying and contribute to that part of funding. You should get a funding policy for the end user, that they also contribute back to the protection of generating their water. I think that's the only two main points I wanted to make. Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. Teresa, just a quick check. Are we going to be thrown out of this platform since it's 12 o'clock?
No, we can continue if you would like.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing there's a lot of conversation, and yeah, I can see, and we still have a lot of people that are still in here and making inputs. Pearl, do you want to come in, and then I give back to Stanley to reflect back on what Pete just said?
Thanks, Ansile. I just wanted to comment on the fact that I don't think this is about a binary where we're saying protect strategic water source areas and don't do anything downstream. But because this particular engagement is around strategic water source areas and what we do in those areas that supply the downstream users with water, but it does not have an exclusionary sort of like statement that says, okay, do this up here and don't do anything down there, because we're very much aware that downstream there's a lot of stuff that's happening as well. This water that we are getting from our strategic water source areas is leaking downstream, and there must be a lot of work that's also being done downstream where this water is supplying. So it's not a binary. And also the other thing is that I agree with someone who just said that there's activities in these areas. These are not vast areas that have nothing happening in them. there's forestry, there's a lot of commercial activities, there's settlements, there's everything in these areas. So given what's happening already in these areas, what should we be doing to make sure that these areas are secured and they continue to supply the water that they are already supplying to the downstream users? I think we should not be thinking about it as a binary that says we're saying, protect and secure strategic water source areas, but leave the downstream areas alone. We're not saying that. The ideal situation actually would be payment for ecosystem services, where we're saying those people that are benefiting from these areas should actually be putting resources into securing these areas. That would be an ideal situation. And resources means do whatever you need to do downstream to make sure that the water that you're getting is used more effectively and more efficiently.
Thanks, Dr. Gola. Stanley, do you want to wrap up with your last comment, unless there's another burning question coming from the group?
I think the first question should be, is there any further question?
Okay.
If we start by saying wrapping up, it's like we are closing them.
Okay.
Let's ask them if there is further question. If not, I can respond to it and then we wrap up.
Thank you, Mphathi. Leadership have just spoken, colleagues. Please, can I just check if there's any more inputs, questions that we want to share with the department, with SANBI, any suggestions, any opportunities that we are seeing coming from this conversation by show of hands? Okay. Going twice, going once. It is gone. Stanley, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me acknowledge the sentiments by Pete. I got 2 points there where he said we need to look at a cyclical way of managing water resources, where we don't look at only the availability, but also use what is available in a manner that we don't pose much pressure on the resources that are available. He also touched on the issue of water pricing, which is synonymous to payment for ecosystem services. And these funds can be redirected either towards rehabilitation of those strategic water source areas that might have been affected. This opportunity to Ms. Jackie J to say concluding remarks as we work together on this area.
Thank you, Stanley. I just wanted to thank everyone who made the time to participate in today's webinar, and thank you for engaging with the contents and for bringing forward your concerns and your inputs. I think they're well noted. And just to note, this is a progressive field of work. And I think that perhaps in the future we can come back to LaRSSA if you'll have us at this platform and provide you with some additional updates as and when they happen. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, colleagues, for your participation. Back to you, Tansile.
Thank you, team. Thank you to LaRSSA for the platform to engage with amazing audience. And thank you to everyone that has stayed until now, even though we are 5 minutes past the time. We really appreciate you being here with us and looking forward to engaging even further in the future. I've just also shared the link to register for the conference that is coming 17 to 20 September in Sun City. Let's see each other there and continue these amazing conversations. I will let it close, Teresa, if that's fine. Thank you to everyone, and the webinar is done.